Welcome to Paul Champlina's Talking Property channel.
Hello, this is Paul Champlina's Talking Property, and this episode of Lifetime Stories and Property, I have my good friend Joshua Andrew Burnham. How are you?
I'm good, Paul. How are you?
Yeah, very good. Thank you so much for coming on.
problem.
So Joshua, I'm going to call you Josh, obviously.
problem.
Your mum calls you Joshua, isn't she?
Correct, when I'm in
right,
trouble.
only when you're in trouble. So Josh is a really, really good friend of mine. He was a professional boxer. He's a trainer. He's a gym owner. Got an amazing story. And he trains me. I'm one of your best boxers, aren't I?
Absolutely.
Great answer.
it.
And I didn't pay him to say that. I love my boxing. I do my white collar boxing. I don't do it anymore because I'm too old. And he also helps me with my charity event, Rumble with the Agents. He does all my training and he does all the matchups and stuff. So Josh, on this section, I invite people in that are really at the top of their game to talk about their story and to try and be influential and inspirational to people watching this, and because it's not all about property, it's about people's backgrounds and how they actually got into property at the end, albeit even if they're a homeowner or a landlord. So tell me, why did you become a professional boxer? What's the story?
So if I start when I was young, I mean, I was a real shy, quiet kid, and I think it started out, my parents just wanted to get me kind of out of my shell a little bit. That's what I take from it anyway. Wanted to probably get me into some kind of sport. I was always tiny as well, do you know what I mean? I was the smallest kid in my whole year.
Me?
Yeah, do you know what I mean?
Still am, yeah.
That's it, I grew up a little bit. I think.
Yeah, exactly.
So I was the smallest kid in my whole year growing up, and then, you know, I think they just wanted to give me something to focus my attention on. And it just took off, really. I mean, I tried a few other sports. I played squash for a bit, played football for a bit.
I've seen you play football.
Yeah, terrible.
Just as
awful.
well. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. So I thought something like boxing, you know,
Yeah.
where how I felt when I was a kid, anyway, where I could fight people my own size, my own weight. It wasn't, you know,
Did you ever have fights at school, or was it just?
Yeah, we used to get fights at school. Yeah, we used to get things out, but you know, probably more so after I started boxing. If I'm being honest with you, do you know what I mean? Before then, I wouldn't say boo to a ghost, but yeah, and I think boxing kind of took off. And I got to a point when I think I was like 21, 22. I'd had 50-something fights, amateur, and then just thought, I turn over, and then I turned pro. And
so let's rewind that back.
Yeah.
So firstly, you went to a gym in Bushy, wasn't it? The amateur
Correct,
gym in
yeah, I
Bushy.
boxed at Bushy Boxing Club. I had Mick and Danny Shinkwin,
Right.
and John Smith were my coaches.
Right. Yeah.
I spent my last few amateur years.
And how old were you when you had your first amateur fight?
I think I was like 12, maybe.
Oh, like 12.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. I think I started boxing about 11. I think I put in my first bout when I was 12. So I've got to be honest. Timescales a bit all over the place.
No, it's fine.
I've taken way too many punches, but yeah, I'm going to say 12 years old.
And can you remember that first fight and how you felt?
I remember, out of everything I don't remember, I can remember walking in the gym for the first time.
Wow. And
I just remember being petrified. My dad telling me the week before, you know, I've called them down the road and start boxing. I was like, yeah, God, wicked, but I was petrified. And it was one of those, it was like walking into a speakeasy in a Western, do you know what I mean? When you walk in, the door shuts and everyone stops and looks at you.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, maybe I've exaggerated it in my head.
No, but I understand. When you're 12,
I just remember my coach, my first coach, Danny Shinkwin, and this was before the smoking ban, obviously, so he had a fag hanging out of his mouth. And everyone stopped and I've walked up with my dad and he's had a big drag of his cigarette. It sounds really dramatic.
Yeah.
And he's just blown at me, he's gone, so you tough then or what? Like that. And I was just going, I don't know. I just remember saying, I guess we'll find out in a minute.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was it, man. I never looked back from there.
You got hooked?
I got hooked, yeah. I mean, you know, I still, for a long time, even boxing, I was still shy and quiet in the boxing gym and with other people, and eventually kind of, you know, once I realised, you know, if I really get my head down and work hard at this, I don't think I was ever a great natural sportsman. Have you say natural?
You had to work at it.
I really had to work hard, but I saw the benefit in working hard at that. It was just me and one other person. I didn't have to rely on a team. I didn't have a team to let down, is how I felt, if I'm being honest with you. It was just me being able to focus on, if I made a mistake, it was just my mistake. If I did something good, I would see the benefit of it. And I think that's what kind of pushed me to take it on further.
And how many amateur fights did you have?
I'm going to say 55, 56 maybe, yeah.
That's a lot.
Yeah. I mean, you know, it's quite a lot for someone that didn't overly excel as an amateur. Like, I think, you know, I won one national title, but I would normally get beaten in the semi-final or the final.
In your amateurs, did you fight anyone of any name?
Not really.
Right.
I mean, there's a couple guys who are pro now. I never fought anyone who's now a world champion, if you know what I mean. I always did good. I was always a good boxer. I think I really came into my own as a pro. I think in my head, you know, the whole having to rush through it didn't really suit me that well in my head. I wanted to kind of take my time a bit more.
Because you always having to point score.
I'm quite an aggressive, I want to say person because I'm not overly aggressive, but when it comes to fighting, I like to be in front of you. I like to be there. I like to feel the shots in front of me. I didn't really want to sit back for too long. And so yeah, it definitely suited me a bit more. But obviously, unfortunately, it was a bit short-lived.
So look, we're going to come to that in a second.
Yeah.
So talk about the transitional of, you've done your amateurs, and I know your dad. We can tell the story about knowing your dad's in property.
Correct, yeah.
He's an agent. I met your dad when I started Animal Action in 2000. I met your dad in 2001 when I moved into Concord House. He was in Trafalgar House. So I knew him, and then I met you after. It's a really weird story. But
I actually remember when it clicked when you were like, how is this your dad?
You came
to your house.
You came to my house, and I was going to watch you box, and I didn't realise he was your dad, and I didn't put the Burnham together. It was really weird because you had an injury and you had to refund all the tickets back.
That's it.
And then from there we became really good mates. So tell me about the story about, you know, the discipline of training and how you transitioned from, I want to be a professional boxer, am I good enough? And then were your parents supportive? Because obviously, you know, it's about timing and people want you to have education and stuff like that. So tell us about that.
So I think, yeah, so speaking with my dad, obviously he runs a business, he's got an estate, he's got Abaco Estates. He's run a successful business for a long time. And I think, you know, he taught me the value of working hard and seeing the results in the end of it, as opposed to just getting through stuff, you know. So if there was ever a time, basically, if I was ever going to do anything, make sure you do it properly. You know, that's
hard work.
Oh yeah, definitely. You know, don't half-ass anything. Don't just do it a little bit. If you're going to do it properly, or move on.
And you are really, you know, we've been mates for years, and you train me once a week at your gym, albeit at 6:30 in the morning. But you are really work conscientious, and I really, and that's why you built a really successful gym up.
Yeah, that's it. And you know, I definitely got to thank my parents for that. And you know, my mum as well has always been there. My mum didn't necessarily like watching the fighting side of it,
of course,
but she was always super supportive of me. You know, made sure if I needed anything or she could help me in any way, then she definitely would go out of her way and beyond. Like both my mum and my dad would always do that for me. And it was, and you know, I think, you know, if it was whatever I wanted to do, they would have done that. And I think that's what
you had really supportive parents, which is amazing.
Definitely.
But the decision to think, I'm going professional, how did it come to, I want to be a professional now?
I think,
and make a living out of this?
I think by that point, you know, I always say to all the fighters that at some point, competing in any sport stops being fun, if that makes sense. It's always fun, but you know, you get to a point where you're like 20, 21, what am I doing? You know, I just had a girlfriend, it's now my wife. We just started becoming serious.
Yeah.
And then, you know, am I going to focus more time on her, something that's not paying me? Or, you know, I want to start a career in something, if you want, you're going to start a family. And everyone reaches that point, that crossroads where, okay, the fun element, I still enjoy it, but it's becoming less fun because...
But you were still quite young at 21, because a lot of people made that decision in the late 20s. So you were quite mature in that way.
I never went to university.
Yeah.
I started working straight away. I started PTing. And again, you know, I'm making money, and my mind was very much of like, well, I'm either going to do it now or I'm not going to bother doing it. I had been in the Nationals a few times. You know, did all right, but didn't quite get to the point of, oh, okay, I'm going to get on Team G&B now. I never made it to the final or won the whole thing. So if you're not going to excel at that point, you know, I'm now thinking, all right, you know, I'm in a serious relationship, going to end up looking to, and I was never one to go out that much anyway. I never used to go out party and whatever because of boxing. You know, my obsessive compulsive mind was all focused on boxing and all focused on one thing. So I think my decision was basically, I'm either gonna turn over or focus on.
But don't have any regrets.
Or basically just give it, you know, a proper go. I knew I had a good support network around me.
Yeah.
I wasn't gonna get shafted in the biggest shafting business there is in boxing.
Yeah.
And so yeah, that was it really.
So talk to us about how many professional fights did you have, and talk to us what your record was and your first fight.
So I only had 2 pro fights. Obviously, I had to retire due to an injury. in the end. And if I'm being honest with you, that 1 year that I was a pro was just a bit.
2016?
2016, it was a nightmare. So I turned pro. I had my pro debut at the Prince Regent Hotel in Chigwell.
Yep, no, it was.
You know, I'd done. Have I just knocked this off? Sorry. I'd done a good amount of tickets for it. Was fantastic. I had my next fight booked in, and a week before my second fight, I broke my hand, my left hand. Got over it. I had my second fight again. Did a great amount of tickets. You know, was the biggest ticket seller on the night. I think was at the York Hall,
which is the home of boxing.
Home of boxing. Had that. It was a great fight, and then had my third fight booked in. A week before the third fight, broke my right hand. Again, both times in my last bar.
Wow.
This one was really bad actually. Anyway, got over it.
And as professional boxers, you don't get paid.
Don't get paid. You don't fight, don't get paid. So I think that was the time where
you came to my house.
Yes, you had bought a ticket off me.
Yeah.
And then I said to my dad, I think I was just in a bad place. You know what I mean? And my dad was helping me, driving me around.
Yeah.
And I said, I've got to quickly drop tickets off this fella's named Paul. I go, Paul what? Champlain. He's like, I know Paul, I know years. And then we walked in.
I know, it was mental. It was mental.
Yeah. Anyway, and then, so I got over the broken hand, obviously. Back in the gym. Had now my scheduled third fight coming up. And then you have to do yearly medicals as a professional boxer, including a brain scan. And just, obviously came back, couldn't carry on the brain scan.
And what did they find, Josh?
There was a small tear in part of it, it's called the septal leaflets in your brain.
Right.
So then I had to go and have an enhanced brain scan, and they basically remember calling me saying, we advise the board not to renew your license.
Wow.
Yeah, crazy.
And how did you feel at that point? Your whole dream of being a professional boxer, and it's like being taken away from you.
You know what it is, again, because whatever I would have done or wouldn't have done as a boxer is kind of irrelevant. Do you know what I mean? A lot of people said, you were really good, you could have done this, and the next thing, it really doesn't matter. I put everything into it. If my level was going to be,
no regrets.
If my level was going to be English champion or my level was going to be world champion or British, I never got to find it out.
Right.
And I think the problem is when you have something taken away from you, being a competitive person anyway, my brain just exploded, man. Kell Brook actually made a good quote once when he retired. The reason he came back is because he said he felt like he died. I felt like I didn't really know. I felt like I was dead.
You felt lost.
I felt like I was dead. I felt like I didn't know who I was.
How do you deal with that? How do you explain? How do you actually deal with that? I mean, you've lost that massive void of fighting. I mean, obviously you'd been doing training, and obviously the next best thing I suppose is training fighters and stuff at a really young age as well. And we can talk about that in a sec. But how do you deal with that disappointment? How did that affect you mentally?
I mean, there's no real easy way of saying it. It completely fucked me in, on all levels. I kind of just hit the ground running when it came to catching up for lost time with drink, drugs. I think because I got married and had kids so young as well.
Oh, you did?
I was 23 when we got married and I had my daughter. And then when this happened, my second daughter was on the way. And the truth is, I didn't really know how to act. I can't really express to you now the feelings I felt.
We didn't know what to do.
I didn't know the feeling. I didn't understand what to do with myself. The first thing I did was just kind of get into work and get my head down and just kind of, all right, listen, it's over now, forget about it. And then slowly the drinking and the partying and the getting into trouble, getting arrested and doing all this mad stuff kind of came in. And I actually remember thinking, right, I've got to get into coaching now. I've got to stay into boxing because I'm starting to lose my mind.
You need to focus.
Had a few fighters come my way, but it just got progressively worse. If I'm being honest with you, in terms of the abusing my body side of things, I think as well where I've been where my obsession and compulsion had been taken up by training more. If I'm honest with you, I trained too much. I trained more than I needed to train. I sparred more than I needed to spar, which is what ended up causing you don't get a thing like that in 2 fights.
No.
Sparring.
You did too many hits.
I was sparring too much. I was a punch bag. I had quite a good chin, but it didn't do me any favours. You're getting paid money to be a sparring partner. You're sparring with elite level fighters who are paying you for a reason.
So the addictive side of you came out in drink and drugs.
Yeah, I mean, thinking back to it, it was always there. It just came out in training at the start, and then I discovered drinking drugs, and one thing led to another. Fast forward, not even that long to say the truth, and I was hooked. And I think looking back now, a lot of the things I was doing, the way I was acting, the way I was treating people, was off the back of that kind of like.
Because you weren't present?
I wasn't present. I was just on a downward spiral of self-harm and
Button. Yeah.
smash the fucking button. Do you know what I mean? I was just doing whatever I wanted, whenever I wanted. No one could tell me not to.
And you had a family.
You know? And I had a family who, you know, I'm so grateful that my wife was who she was and she stuck by me. And, you know, because it could have got a lot worse, a lot quicker.
And you've got really great parents as well.
Yeah,
so
that's
you've got
man.
You're lucky you've got a really good support network. Imagine if you didn't.
100%. I've got great parents, I've got great in-laws.
Yeah.
You know, I've got great, everyone's, I'm very lucky. You know, whenever I speak about things like this, I just speak about how lucky I feel that I had the people around me, because with the mindset I had and the kind of the low mental health state that I was in, I mean, I wouldn't be sat here now, definitely not.
Fine. And tell me, how long are you clean now?
So in February, I was clean for 2 years.
Amazing.
So, I mean, what
Well
month
done.
are we in? I don't know, May,
That's
February, March,
fantastic.
April. Yeah, no,
you're doing the
great.
step programs. And
Yeah,
all
we're
that.
doing the steps. I
Well
mean,
done.
you know, I'm doing the steps begrudgingly. In terms of if you ask my sponsor, but you know,
but you need it.
Anything's better than where I was, man. I mean, you know,
well done. That's a great inspiration.
Thank you.
That really is. You should be really proud of that.
Yeah, yeah.
And you're a great
definitely.
dad and stuff.
Thank you,
I mean
Thank
that
you.
from the heart. So let's talk about you being a boxing coach and obviously how you came about setting up jab boxing.
Yeah.
In Finchley, in Bushy,
yeah,
which
so-
obviously I come to.
So I was working when I trained. I was training with Don Charles as a pro who had a gym in Mill Hill at the time.
Yeah. Who trains Daniel Dubois?
He trains Dubois now. Yeah.
Used to train Chisora.
Chisora, yeah. So he's, you know, we had a good team at the time when I was a pro, and then when I retired, I was training my fighters out of Don's gym. He's still a good close friend of mine, Don.
Yeah, exactly.
And there was kind of some internal politics with that gym at the time, and we ended up having to. I was training my clients there, but I had to move my fighters somewhere else, and it was going a bit back and forth. And then, you know, we had a bit of money there to set the gym up myself, so I found a unit in Bushy and opened my own gym, and that was in 2019.
So just before COVID.
Just before COVID.
Well, that's tough.
Man, COVID, man. Honestly, that was the worst.
Yeah, I mean, you know what? But before you talk about that, I mean, I struggle with mental health. I don't know if you remember in the first lockdown. So we had to, you know, I have to train. I have to do, you know, and that training is really, really important for me because I'll get fat otherwise. But also to train and do the pads with you. And I've done, you know, like 5 or 6 fights or whatever. But I remember in lockdown, I was desperate to train with you. Do you remember?
Yeah.
And we may as well just talk about it. But I remember I trained with you and the police came and I had to hide in the toilet.
Yeah, I remember
that.
yeah.
But it was tough.
We did what we had to do, man.
I know, you know, and I was one of your professional boxers, wasn't I?
That's it, exactly. If the police asked, you're a pro boxer.
I know. In hindsight, yeah.
But you know, the lockdown was quite interesting because we had to close the gym. The government gave us money to keep the gym closed.
Yeah.
But there was nothing. I mean, I couldn't. At that point, I had a few decent pro fighters.
Yeah, you were allowed. But you were allowed to stay open because of training boxers.
In the first lockdown, we weren't.
Right.
So the first lockdown, I went and worked as a gravedigger for my father-in-law. My father-in-law runs a cemetery.
Yes, in Bushy.
In Bushy, and so I went to work as a gravedigger for 12 weeks.
So you must have seen multiple things.
Yeah, but yeah, you know what? I loved it, mate.
Really?
I absolutely loved it. Well,
because you were out in the fresh air.
I don't know if you remember the first lockdown.
Yeah,
it was hot the whole time.
I can't forget it.
I was out in the sun. I was digging. I was the fittest I'd ever been since I retired from boxing.
Wow.
And then, I mean, in terms of the whole death thing, you got so decent. The mourners had to stay like 20 meters away, wherever it was. I didn't really hear the crying. You know, there was only 4 or 5 of them allowed. They didn't. You know. It's just you move from one to the next, and there was a lot, unfortunately, at the time.
And it was,
coming in. And then, I don't know. I was finished work at 3 o'clock. I saw my kids more than ever. You know, we saved loads of money. I was a key worker. I skipped the queue at Morrison's. It was unbelievable. Do you know what I mean? I got my key workers badge.
Yeah.
It wasn't until the second lockdown they reintroduced boxing, and then I come back to the gym, so I was allowed to train boxers and non-boxers.
Yeah.
And then we actually had a few behind closed door shows, which were a good experience. And then reopened again.
Yeah. So tell me about currently how many professional boxers you're training, and what's your plan? As I mean, you're a younger coach. You know, what's your plan as a coach now? What's your ambition? Where do you want to get to?
So 2 and a bit years ago, when I first got clean. Before then, I had a good stable of fighters. I had a fighter, we fought for a European title, won a WBC international belt. You know, we had a few other guys fighting on big platforms and big events. And then I went to rehab, sorted myself out. And when I went to rehab, I called everyone up and said, listen, I'm done. Got to find a new coach. I'm finished. I think I had resented boxing a little bit for making me that way. And then I came out and a few people started sniffing around, and basically I got back into it. I had a chat with my wife, you know, who again stuck by me through thick and thin. I had a chat with my parents, my in-laws, everyone was kind of like, you know.
Because they are very much part of the gym.
Yeah, man,
very
they
much
are.
part.
You know, they really are. You know, it's a real family-run business, and I couldn't have done anything without all those people. And
I mean, we even sorry to interrupt, Josh, we even for ages we pay for our staff here at Hamilton Fraser to do a session with you.
That's right,
and they've loved it.
Loved
it.
And so so I got back into boxing, and so I basically had to rebuild. So now I've got a few fighters, you know, one's 4-0, one's making his debut, another one's 4-0. I've got another guy who's 4-1, and they're all slowly creeping back up. I'm getting back to that point where I was. I've got a few super featherweights, super middleweight.
Have you got that fire back in your belly now?
Yeah, absolutely.
With the fighters.
You know, I kind of approached boxing in a completely different mindset when I came back, and I feel like I had to go through what I went through in order to learn from it. I had to see the game for what the game was, and you know,
and it's a bit shitty, the game, isn't it?
It's the shittiest.
Right.
Yeah, the
and
worst.
What if you could change like one or two or three things about boxing? I mean, obviously, you know, there's a lot of backstabbing. What would you actually change to make it a better sport?
Communication.
Communication?
Yeah.
Okay, why is that?
No one speaks to anyone.
No one speaks to anyone?
I'm currently waiting for 4 or 5 people to get back to me about something. Each one of those people are waiting for another 4 or 5 people to get back to them. And everyone.
What do you mean about matchmaking, putting fights on, promotions?
There's a lot of personalities, a lot of egos, and a lot of different who are independent from each other, and no one really speaks to each other. So I might say to you something, someone else might tell you something else, and you might tell that third person someone, and we all get on the night. And then split up in the air as a communication.
Okay, that's
and so when you find someone in boxing who can communicate things and just make things, there's no emotion involved, there's no ego involved, it's just a business transaction. This is that.
Well, look, I mean, you talk about that. Look what's happened with Frank Warren and Eddie Hearn now. Yeah. They're best mates, where for years they wouldn't work with each other.
Because a lot of things that happen in boxing is not done by contract. A lot of it's handshaking verbally.
People get shafted.
Well, so if I verbally tell you something and you misinterpret it and tell someone else that I've actually done
communication.
So you know, it's not until you get a lot of, and I'm not talking at the high level. I'm talking the majority of boxing is at grassroots, and it really is as much as I've got to take your word for it.
Right. And let me ask you this about grassroots. It's quite important. And you talked about being arrested and stuff like that. Let's just wind it back. Look at the kids for today. The Gen Z generation and the kids that you. I mean, I come to your gym. It's absolutely packed with young kids, and there's women class. It's really, 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 really great. Think about how boxing helps and change people's lives. It's quite unique in that sense. Isn't it
really is, and we've got quite a few cases of people that boxing's really helped. So when I first opened the gym, I really wanted it to be like where everyone will be welcome, whether you want to fight or you don't want to fight, you just want to learn. You don't really care about fighting or learning, you want to just get fit, and boxing is a good distraction. And all of those demographics of people can train at the same time.
Yeah.
Then when you got to the people who want to compete, right, we've got people with autism. We've got people who are reformed gang members. We've got people who are currently living in terrible living situations, young kids and teenagers who boxing is their only escape.
Yeah.
And we have that all in the gym. We have other people who come from more privileged backgrounds.
Yeah, cool.
And the truth is, when you're in your training gear and I'm in my training gear, we have no idea.
Cool.
I might know, because you might have told me.
Yeah. Nothing counts. Yeah.
You guys are partnered together, and he might be a doctor, and he might just come out of prison.
Yeah.
And that's the beauty of boxing. It kind of brings everyone on the same platform. And, we've got guys who are in the gym, and I know that they're thinking, I'm doing this because I enjoy it. And I know that other people are thinking, I'm doing this because I need this to work. This has to work. I need to get my family out of the situation they're in.
Yeah.
And you've got all those different people. And I think my job, when it comes to the fighters, is just people managing, understanding where they are mentally and physically and in their life. You know, I can't give you the same opportunities I can give you because this opportunity might cost you a bit of money that you can't afford to lose. So I have to look at a different venue for way in for you.
Yeah. So really, you have a sense of responsibility.
Massive.
You have to have you know, we believe in passion and leadership here at Hamilton Fraser. You know, we have we have 240 staff and whatever. So you have to have that with regard to what you do. With all these people coming in to your gym. You know.
100%.
Yeah. I think also you're also a bit of a social worker as well.
Definitely.
You know, mentor, psychiatrist. You've got all that stuff going on.
And you know, there's also a lot of these people that will manipulate you if you give them the opportunity. So I've got to find that balance between being caring, being a social worker, and also I'm your coach. Don't fuck about.
Yeah.
You know, and you've got to have that kind of. You're not going to get away with it just because of this. You know, where's the line? Where's the line between me kicking you out and between me putting you in a dangerous position?
Have you ever had scenarios? You must. I know you have. So that's why I'm asking this question. Have you had scenarios where it's actually properly kicked off in the gym?
Yeah, I've had a few. Yeah.
Go on, tell us about one. You don't have to mention any names, but just tell us about a scenario about something that's built up. I mean, obviously, I know sparring gets out of hand, but just like
we've had a few sparring ding dongs properly. I mean, we had one sparring situation where there's quite a well-known boxer at the moment, which again I'm not going to say his name. He's a heavyweight, and he was sparring with my cruiserweight, and my cruiserweight had beaten him as an amateur.
Oh, they got their
so
beef.
this heavyweight. Anyway, my cruiserweight then went on an interview and said about beating him as an amateur.
Oh, jeez.
And I actually think he said if he wants it in the pros, he can have it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I get a phone call from this heavyweight's coach, who's at the time he's now quite a big name in boxing, and can we have some sparring? I knew that was going to happen. Anyway, they got in, and I think the one had his head down, the other one leant on him. Anyway, whatever, he lifted him up and he threw the heavyweight off. He said, anyway, it all kicked off. Now this heavyweight in particular went like 0 to roadman in about half a second.
Right.
Ripped his gloves off, and you know, besides me, I can't. Luckily, I knew him from when I was a kid who managed to defuse it. I had to send my cruiserweight into the kitchen and I was holding the door shut while he's trying to boot the door open. And you know, I've had loads of things, man. Loads of people arguing, people falling out. But at the end of the day, we're fighters. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
We have that
it's in your
emotional.
DNA.
We've got that fiery side.
Yeah.
Who are you talking to when you talk to me like that?
Yeah.
And the way you say it, why are you saying it like that?
Yeah.
You know.
But I think also, you know, we both went to the Ben Eubank fight at Tottenham. I mean, what a great fight that was. I mean, I wouldn't want that to happen again.
No.
I just think they've got to move on. I think cutting the weight was too dangerous. But there's nothing like, you know, exactly what you said before. Two people in a ring that have trained and sacrificed, and you know, to the fighting fan who's not really been a boxer, you can't really understand what they've had to go through. I mean, you know, I think I remember the day where Josie used to train me. You know, he was Commonwealth welterweight champion, and he was very awkward. He's southpaw. He called out Ricky Hatton and Junior Witter at the time, and he could never get a fight. And all his fights used to get cancelled, and he never used to get paid. And the mental strength that you have to do to pick yourself up again is it's unbearable at times, isn't it?
It really is, man. Really, really is. And you know, you're dealing with people who, like I said, don't come necessarily from any kind of privilege whatsoever. Do you know what I mean? They're in a situation that a lot of time you wouldn't wish on your worst enemy.
Yeah.
And so these guys are looking at it as nothing's worse than that. Yeah. So I'm going to put myself in that situation. I'm going to risk it. And then you've got the other side of the coin with guys who have got. They don't need to box. They've got money, they've got family.
They've still got the hunger.
But then they've got, well, I'll put myself in this situation because worst case, I'll go back to what I've got.
Yeah, of course. You know? It's the security. So coming up, just two more questions. There. Obviously, you're helping us. You have been for a number of years about Rumble the Agents. You love doing the show. It's a good show, isn't it?
Brilliant.
We get agents beating the hell out of each other, which is really good. You organise boxing. That's on the 19th of June in.
I'm still waiting for my dad to put someone forward.
Okay.
Still waiting for Aberco Estates. I'm
waiting. I'm waiting without doubt. I'm not coming out of retirement. I'm just organising a night. You're great doing the matchmaking. So look, it's lifetime stories and property. Talk us about property. At the moment, you're actually maybe an accidental landlord. You're renting out a property. Explain how that all came about because of the circumstances.
Yeah. So it's our second home we've owned, and basically when I went to rehab, I'd done all my money. I had no money. You know, I had a lot of money to the tax man, to everyone else. We've managed to completely get debt free now.
Brilliant.
And when I came out, we basically decided that we would rent that property out, we'd move somewhere else, save a bit of money up from there. And so we're currently a landlord. We actually were gonna potentially look to buy another home at one point, but then the new stamp duty law came out, and
the additional stamp duty
pulling out, and it didn't make financial sense for us. So
well, you've got loads of expert property advice with your dad.
Correct. Yeah,
which is good.
absolutely.
And I love Kevin.
Yeah.
He's a great guy. So look, thank you so much for spending time to coming out and being interviewed. I hope you've enjoyed it.
Yeah, definitely.
So thank you for joining us on Lifetime Stories and Property with Josh Burnham. Please hit the subscribe button, and we get some other great guests in that have really been at the top of their game.
Subscribe now to Talking Property.